Okay, here I am again in front of a couple of cameras, which means that I have a plugin that I have to share with you. I have connected with Ryan at Schwabe Digital, and he showed me this plugin when it first came out, and it is something I have been using non-stop ever since. It works in single band mode, but more importantly, I love using this in multi-band mode. One of the things that you think of in a plugin that has multi-bands is probably covering a wide frequency range from low end to high end. What I want to show you with this plugin on this particular song that I'm working on here is using it on individual tracks that actually don't have a very wide frequency range. It's an EDM track. I've got it on a kick drum, I've got it on a hi-hat, and I've got it on a snare drum, all three of them in multi-band mode, which may not make sense to you, but I'm going to show you why it does. It's an EDM electronica kind of tune. I'm going to solo each one of these elements, kick, snare, and hi-hat, and kind of go through what I'm doing and show you why in multi-band it works really well. I'm also going to say that I'm assuming that you're familiar with how this works generally in the first place. If you're not, you should certainly check out some of the other videos that go through all of the parameters, and the manual also happens to be excellent. So if you're seeing this for the first time, definitely check those out first so it doesn't feel so unfamiliar to you. But let's take a look. I'm going to start with a kick drum here. There's two kicks that are being routed to orange clip on an aux. So I'm combining two different kick drums into an aux, and I have orange clip on this aux. Let's listen to it in bypass first. Your very standard sort of electronic kick drum sound. Nothing wrong with it whatsoever. Certainly could use some EQ, can use some compression, but what's better is if we put orange clip on it in multi-band mode and listen to what we get. Now that is quite a difference without doing very much whatsoever. We're adding in saturation, we're changing the balance of the low end, the middle, and the high, and adjusting the wet-dry balance between all of this. And what you end up with is something far different than what we started with. And when you think about what kind of tune this is going in, this makes perfect sense. One more time. Saturation isn't crazy, so it's not distorting like nuts. But let's see what happens if we start pulling back the wet-dry balance, putting back the dry just a little bit, and getting close to where we started from. Now we're exactly where we started from, but it just works better, especially in an EDM tune, if we get a little bit of that distortion and saturation going on. These white little dots here are showing you the peaks, and so it gives you an idea of how far you got to pull the level down and get that distortion creeping in, along with where you set the ceiling and the gain, all in combination with the various oversampling modes, and this is what you get. No compressor, no EQ alone is going to get you to this point. This is the perfect plugin for this kind of sound in this kind of tune. One last time, bypassing it in and out. Let's go take a look at the hi-hat. One of the things that bugged me about the hi-hat in this track is that for an EDM track, the sound of this hi-hat started way too thin. It was just too pretty. In this kind of tune, we need a little bit of aggression, we need some action on it, we need to feel it, and it needs to cut through the mix. This thin little hi-hat wasn't doing that. Let's take a listen to this hi-hat without the plugin being in. It sounds fine, but imagine once all of the tracks are in this tune, for an aggressive EDM tune. It's just too pretty. Orange Clip is the tool we're going to use to give some weight to it, to give some aggression to it, to give some meat to it. And it's so simple to do just by adjusting these various values in multi-band mode. Here we go. Not subtle. What did we do to get here? Well, we pulled the ceiling way, way down. We're working at 8 times oversampling. We've adjusted these 2 oversampling parameters. We're pulling back the level of the mid band. We're pulling back the level of the high band. We're adjusting the amount of saturation that's happening across these 3 different bands. And what we're getting between all of this is that meat, that hair of saturation that's happening, and the thickness that's going to make this hat cut through the mix. Let's adjust the wet and dry balance as it plays, and we can check out the difference as it's playing. Well, that's an interesting one. We're pulling out all the mid-band with the mixer here. I just love the amount of control that you have over these sounds with this plugin. Let's do it a little bit more. That's clearly in the mid-band where all the meat is coming from. We'll adjust the high band here as well. It all starts acting like an EQ. Imagine, within the course of this mix, automating those parameters and using them as filters at a point. The creativity, if you imagine it and you do it, you're going to end up with something really special. So let's put this back in place and we'll take a look at one more drum element here. Okay, I've got a group of snares that are all bus to 1 aux here, and Orange Clip is on this 1 aux. Let's check out what the balance of these various snares is without the plugin in place. Now with it in. Well, it got fatter, it got louder, it got more meaty. Does it sound like it just got louder? You might get that impression if you're not taking a really close look at it and listening very carefully, but it's way more than that. So let's check out what's going on here. I'm going to adjust the wet-dry balance as it plays, and you can hear the difference between without it and with it gradually coming and going, and that's going to show you the difference. As we add more and more of the wet signal in, it gets fatter, a little more saturation that's involved, and being able to adjust that over the course of the mix as elements are getting added is just, I don't have words to describe how useful this plugin is and how easy it is to change the feeling of these sounds and come up with something that, again, no other combination of plugins is going to get you to this spot. What am I doing here? I'm adding a lot of level in the mid band, a hair in the upper band, and I'm pulling away a bunch of the low end of the snare. There's not a bunch of low end in the snare to begin with, but I'm kind of taking care of that even more. Pulling the ceiling back down, -15, it's a lot. Turning up the gain a little bit, and adjusting these various oversampling parameters here. All right, so we've had a good look at using Orange Clip in 3 scenarios on drum tracks within this mix. But let's take a look at one more thing here. I've had it on the mix bus this entire time. Let's pull it up and see what it looks like. I'm using a certain amount of the wet, a certain amount of the dry, but I've actually unlinked these two so I can adjust them both freely at will and add in more of the dry against the wet as opposed to balancing them. It's a great tool, especially on the mix bus. One of the other things that I'm doing very carefully on the mix bus here is changing the knee of the middle band here. So what is the knee really doing in a scenario like this? It's the thing that's really responsible for adding the aggression and the attack in these bands. If I lighten up the knee or make a bigger curve out of the knee, the whole mix is going to feel a little more gentle. But again, we're dealing with an EDM track here. So what I want is aggression. I want it to hit hard, up and down and backwards and forwards. That's the goal. I'm going to take it off of the mix bus here, and we're going to listen to what this mix sounded like without orange clip in place. Then we'll put it back, and you're going to really be able to feel the difference here. Here it is without it on these drums. Let's put it back in. I don't have it set at this point where it's getting a lot louder. The point is, in this particular example, is for it to get tight and aggressive. I'm not at the stage, given that this is a real mix that is yet to even close to becoming finished, as I'm gluing it together, and I want this glued together as I'm building the mix. Level is something I'm going to take care of later on. We're not at that point. One more time, and I'm going to adjust the wet-dry balance here by adding in more of the dry. It's certainly going to get louder, and we can turn them both up if we wanted to, but let's just feel what happens here. And one of the other things that you're looking at is the amount of level versus pulling back the ceiling. Very responsible for the way this is feeling overall within the scope of the mix bus. So let's just play with some of these parameters so you can get a sense what's going on. Well, there's the volume. Let's add some more of the wet in. And you'll notice if you look at the metering over here, even with doing this, adding more of the wet and dry, I'm still not clipping here. So it's a great tool for doing all this without having to worry about how much limiting is going on. That'll happen later. Let's go back to where we started from, and let me play with the knee here. Let's see how adjusting the knee is affecting the way the plugin sounds. Oh, it's so gentle. We don't want that. EDM. Let's make it hit hard. This plugin is going to be in from the very beginning of the mix, and I'm going to mix top down with it in place. So it's obviously going to affect decisions as the mix goes on. Doesn't mean that I may not adjust this later on when the mix is done or at some point during the course of the mix, but this is where it's sitting now. One last time, bypassing it in and out. Just enough at this point to make a difference in the attack and the tightness of the entire mix. I have this thing that I call non-negotiables, and I'm referring to plugins. If you're going to be a mixer and you want to get to the stage of delivering flawless mixes, this plugin, Orange Clip by Schwabe Digital, is on the non-negotiable list. The range of sounds that you can obtain is like no other plugin I know of. No EQ, no compressor alone, no limiter alone, no saturation device alone. is going to get you there. Whether you use this across an entire frequency spectrum or whether you're using it on a simple single track, the range of sounds is remarkable. Orange clip, you need it, go get it, you won't regret it.